this video, I'm going to show you how to carve in some facial features on the swallow. However, I should mention first that this is an optional step. Carving this level of detail is quite small and fiddly. If you'd rather, you can skip straight to painting. Just make sure you've drawn in the pencil lines, as shown in the last video. Your reference sheet will show you which colours go where. As with previous videos, I've broken down the process into steps. However, I feel I should mention, these steps act as more of a guideline in this video. When it comes to carving details such as this, you might find you have your own preference of knife and chisel holds, depending on if you're right or left-handed, for example. I'm showing you what I do, but it's definitely not the only way to do it. Also, if you have a bigger range of carving tools, you might find a narrower gouge is useful for this step. I'll be continuing to use the whittling knife and the 16mm gouge, because I want to demonstrate how much you can do with just two tools. In the first step, I'm going to show you how to carve the eyebrow area. By this I mean the area below the brow and above the beak. Start by scoring along the brow line with your whittling knife. Use a series of short stabs. This will help you keep in control of the direction of the blade. You can retrace your steps and join it all up if necessary. Next, score along the top of the beak. And finally, score around the curve of the eyebrow as well. Now, you're going to slice into the apex with the tip of your knife. That's the point where the brow and the beak meet. Remove the wood a tiny slither at a time. You don't want to rush this process. After a few cuts, it may look a bit like this. We're going to cut in deeper. But first, let's blend backwards, as there's a ridge forming in the centre. To do this, I'm using my chisel in the pencil hold, gripping the chisel halfway down the shaft. I'm only carving with the very edge of the gouge, so if you have a narrower gouge, you could use that instead. Work along the brow line as shown. When you're ready, rescore along the brow line and along the top of the beak. Then continue slicing into the apex with the tip of your knife. Don't forget, you can try using your chisel if this works better for you. Keep going with either tool until you're happy. Here's an extra tip. You can use the edge of your chisel to clean up the edge of the eyebrow. Hold it like a pencil, but work sideways. Start at the top of the brow and work downhill towards the beak. In step 2, we're going to carve the beak. First of all, curve off the corner of the beak that we've just carved. At the moment it'll have a sharp edge, so just round that off with your whittling knife. Next, we're going to carve the top of the beak. Using your knife, start at the brow and flick the blade downwards towards the tip of the beak. It's actually quite hard to describe this action, so watch what I'm doing and I hope you get the idea. We're actually just carving one side of the beak for now, so stop at the centre line. I've kept a centre line drawn in on my beak. Now score along the centre of the beak. You can use one continuous movement for this, rather than a series of stabs. It's a fairly straight line, so it's easy to stay in control. Next, start carving away the lower beak. Use the edge of your gouge, or a narrower gouge if you have one. Start at the base of the beak and work towards the tip. Take off a layer of wood at a time. Don't rush. After a little while, you can rescore the beak to make the cut a bit deeper, before continuing to remove more layers of wood. You want a nice clear ridge to form where the lower beak meets the upper beak. You may also want to clean up the lower beak with your whittling knife. Here's an idea of what to aim for before we move on. Now you need to carve the opposite side. However, you may find you have to adjust or mix up the knife and chisel holds. It'll feel a lot different carving in reverse. Here's what I did. Scoring in the features was exactly the same, but you'll see that I had to grip the puppet the other way up. I tried the same technique as before for carving the eye sockets. But I also found working in the other direction, using the scoring hold, kind of worked as well. Like before, I also tried using my gouge, holding it like a pencil, which also works for cleaning up the eyebrows. Here's something else that can work: slicing towards the beak with the gouge. Like before, I used the gouge for carving the lower beak. I also used the gouge for curving off the corner of the beak. It was easier than using the knife. Here are the final steps before the body is ready for painting. Draw the eyes back in, making sure they're symmetrical. Now, punch a hole in the centre of each eye using your bradawl. Then, gouge a hole using a 1.5mm drill bit. You don't need an electric drill to do this. Just rotate the drill bit by hand. Make sure the point of the drill bit lines up with the bradawl hole. You then need to enlarge the hole with a 3.5mm drill bit. This will make it big enough to inset the bead eyes later. Now the body should be ready for painting.